You may know him from the most recent episode of ABC's hit show, Shark Tank.
Sharks, my name is Destin George Bell. I'm from Austin, Texas. I'm the founder and CEO of Cardio.
And today, he joins Destination Unknown.
Mark was like, literally, shut up, Mr. Wonderful Mean Mug. And genuinely, like, there was a point where I was putting my ability to be on the show on the line.
So please welcome Destin George Bell. Well, life's probably been hectic the past couple weeks, huh?
A little bit. A good amount.
Good amount.
A little bit more than usual.
What's changed since you've been on the show, man?
At the same time as all the things, nothing. I'm still doing basically the same stuff I've been doing.
Yeah.
I'm still reaching out to run clubs. I'm still making videos on Instagram and TikTok. I'm still ideating on new ideas for features in the app and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what's really changed is the amount of people who are aware of it before I reach out to them and talk to them about it. And then the amount of people who are coming to me now.
That's got to be nice.
Oh, dude. We've had CNBC, Forbes, Afrotech.
Destination Unknown.
Yeah, Destination Unknown. Slide in my phone. I'm like, who is this Blazing guy? Like, all right, well, I like the moxie of the kid. All right, sure, go for it. But, people just coming my way and reaching out to me for podcast interviews, for news coverage, for just general articles to be written about me. Even had somebody reach out to me about making a Wikipedia page, which was really funny. Yeah.
I didn't even, I guess I've never thought about that. How a Wikipedia page.
I never thought of it either. Yeah, a whole bunch of things. Honestly, it's been cool. I think the funniest thing that's come out of it, which a lot of people told me, and this is even a funny story from set, and I know we'll talk about the behind the scenes and stuff a lot later, but one of my favorite things about the experience, post filming the episode and all that, was one of the producers came back to my green room after, and she was like, yo, you need to do more TV. I'm like, sure, whatever. And then the episode goes out, and I'm like, oh, that ain't breaking.
You're watching yourself.
Yeah, I'm watching myself like, okay, he's cooking.
Hell yeah.
And then I've had 2 or 3 different reality TV shows actually hit me up about being on their show.
Is that something you'd be open to, or?
If it align with my professional goals, I don't think I'm going to be doing Love Island anytime soon.
Dude.
But, if something is interesting to me, if it's a business-oriented show, a challenge-oriented show.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Something where I get to show my personality and it's not overly dramatic. I'm not a Love Island type of guy, like I said.
The scary part about those reality shows is they can edit whatever they want.
Exactly.
I don't know if you'll be watching Jersey Shore or whatever, and you'll hear someone say something, but they're not on camera. And it's like they can take that from 10 days earlier,
right,
and patch it in to where
they're gonna doctor it and all that,
which is scary.
100%. Yeah, even with Shark Tank, there's a lot of things that they changed. Where I'm like, well, that's not how that happened.
Yeah,
well, that's not when that question was asked. But they paint this narrative because I was in there for about an hour.
Yeah,
right. And then there was a 10-minute clip. There was a lot of stuff that got cut.
So you're pitching the whole hour, or you're interacting the whole hour.
If to anybody who's watching this who's ever, raised money or had an investor meeting, it's pretty much the same exact thing as that.
Okay, so they're drilling.
Yeah, they're drilling. They're getting into the nitty gritty, and obviously they have and this is another thing that some people don't know. They really don't know anything about your company when they get there. Genuinely, the only thing they know is when you have those, poster boards on the side that show your product or, promotional stuff about your product. That's all they got. They know the name of your company. They get a one-liner, and then they see that stuff. And then they have to make a decision based on what they see on, what they think about your company up until you go out there. And
that's pretty risky for them.
It's really risky.
Normally, there would be multiple meetings before investment.
Yeah, and that's why you get into the nitty-gritty, because that was a tough hour. I mean, there's not a lot of dead air in there. You're getting grilled for the whole hour. Question, revenue, margins. Investors, future roadmap, who's your team? Who are you?
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing? How do you compete against this group? What's your distribution strategy? Tell us about your traction. This, they have to pretty much do, months of due diligence in an hour, basically, to make a decision on if they actually want to go through with the deal. And of course, there is stuff that happens afterward. You don't just walk out of there and they get your wire information and send you money. You have to actually do the legit due diligence process. But there is a ton of time that you have to invest in that moment to make sure you even want to do the deal, and you only get about an hour to do it. Right. Sometimes even less than that. So
let's kind of go back to the start of the show. So I imagine knowing what I know about production, I imagine they trot you out there.
Yeah, a lot of trotting.
And then you're standing there for maybe 5 minutes while they work on lighting, all of that stuff, and the
Bro,
sharks are just. Am I right here?
No, definitively. Luckily, it wasn't
Okay.
5 minutes. It was like, I would say probably about 30 to 60 seconds. But, you know, you go through there and you go through the hall, and even that's a process. They're like 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Doors open, move, move, move. You got a guy on a gimbal following you in front of you, and then you got a
Yeah.
camera on the sides and all this different type of stuff. And you're supposed to look straight ahead. And they're like, stop on the rug, right here on this specific spot of the rug. But don't look at the rug. Just know it, feel it. Count your steps. And it's also pitch quiet, you know. They don't play the Shark Tank.
Dun, 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 dun.
They don't. Dun, 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 dun. No, they don't. They really don't. Which is also why I was really curious if they were gonna show my face, because I was actually humming the Shark Tank theme to myself as I was walking through the door. 'Cause I've
That's
been
hilarious.
prepping my walk to the song this whole time, thinking I was gonna hear it, and
Mm-hmm.
then I walked through the door and it was just quiet, and it really freaked me out. So like my coping mechanism was humming it to myself.
It's like when you walk into an interview, like a job interview, and they like close that door, and it's just boom, poof, quiet.
You just got your panel of interviewers just standing in front of you. And you're just, like you said, you stand out there, you get on the rug, and then they're adjusting the lights, and you're just standing there. And so you got Mr. Wonderful Mean Mug, and we got Mark Cuban over here smiling. We got Damon over there looking pensive. And I'm just like,
Yeah,
wow.
I'm sure. Yeah, that's got to be a wild experience. And
Yeah,
and I
it's great.
did hear you say on the show that you grew up like with a stutter,
Yeah.
and that you used to be very nervous, like public speaking and things like that. So how do you get to this point where you're like confident enough to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to sign up for this show and take this opportunity?
Well, the same way you do anything, you know, you practice. You know, I don't think there's a lot of people who are naturally gifted at anything. I think everybody has propensities to be good at something.
Mhm.
But, you know, just like any muscle, if you're not putting in the reps, you're not going to really build it. Unfortunately, you know, public speaking was not something that I was initially very good at, you know, because I had a lisp, I had a stutter. Still have a lisp a little bit. It's way not as bad as it was previously when I was younger. But I always knew, and my mom really stresses on me a ton, that one day I would need to present my ideas well. I would need to present them effectively, succinctly, and charismatically. And unfortunately, those are things that I was not naturally good at. And so my mom would take me to Toastmasters. If anybody who's watching
Yeah.
this is familiar with Toastmasters, pretty much, you know, going out and you talk about different topics, just like a course, or not even a course, like a group where
Right.
you just practice public speaking.
Mhm.
And then I would go with her to networking events, and she would actually make me talk to people. You know, a lot of kids, when they're with their parents or whatever, the parents are talking, they'll just like grab their leg and just hide behind it
Yeah.
and be real quiet. My mom was like, no, introduce yourself, talk to them, maintain eye contact, have a conversation, get to know them, be good at communication, soft skills, you know, being able to be conversational with anybody and be friendly with anybody and find common ground with anybody.
Yeah.
And so over a lifetime of doing that since I was, you know, like 10 years old, I got eventually very good at it. And that was also another funny thing that you brought up about applying to be on Shark Tank. Funny story, I actually did not apply to be on Shark Tank.
Really?
No, I did not apply to be on Shark Tank. That was actually the craziest part of the process before all the filming and stuff happened, is that somebody DM'd me on LinkedIn and they said, yo, I heard about your platform. I think it's really cool. And I saw you talk and you seem very, you know, interesting. Would you like to be on Shark Tank? And I'm like, you know, bullshit.
You're right, because
No,
it's
this is-
LinkedIn. Like,
Yeah, like, come on, really? And the guy reached out, and I mean, he had Shark Tank, casting producer and recruiter on his profile. And I looked him up on, you know, Twitter, X, whatever people are calling it. And he said the same thing on there. And I looked him up online, and I looked through his posts on Instagram. I was like, okay, this guy does seem kind of legit. And so a couple of days later, I actually responded. I didn't respond that day. I took
Yeah.
a couple of days. It was a Friday. I waited till Monday and was like, okay, let's see where this goes. So hit him up, hop on a Zoom call, and then he's very legit. He's asking real questions. It wasn't like, oh, I know Mark Cuban, my dad's cousin, son, nephew played. He was a ball boy for the Mavericks, and me and Mark had a conversation. I have his phone number. He doesn't text me back anymore, but I have it. If you give me $1,000, I'll let you go. See what I
Right.
can do. Like, it wasn't one of those type of situations. It was legitimate. Yeah, I'm on the team. Here's some very thoughtful questions to ask you about your business, and then, okay, if you're really interested, I'll send you some application forms, background check, whatever. And then he sent it to me through a DocuSign with Shark Tank, you know,
Yeah.
embroidered. And like, okay,
We're doing
this is not a
this.
scam. This is actually happening. And so we go through that whole process, and then, you know, eventually they say, all right, cool, come, let's film. Let's
That's
do it.
amazing. So I want to get back to your mom real quick, because you mentioned that she knew that you were going to have to present your ideas.
Mhm.
So as a kid, were you very creative? Were you Like, what made her say that? Or was it just,
Oh, because
curious what made her say that?
yeah, I was always a very business-oriented dude, and I wasn't very good at talking, but that never stopped me from trying.
I love that.
So I would talk your ear off, I just wouldn't be very good at how I expressed it.
Okay.
And so my mom said, "If you're gonna do this," I would sell toys, and I would, try to sell stuff in
She's like, I'm
school and
tired
all
of
that.
listening to this bad salesman.
Yeah, right. It's like, if you're gonna be pitching people, at least be good at pitching, right? So, she just and then also, in general, my mother knew the importance because she's a businesswoman as well, and she
Mhm.
knew from a young age that even if I'm not an entrepreneur, even if I just wanna sell software for Oracle, or if I'm gonna be, bagging up groceries at HEB, whatever it is, you gotta communicate with people, and you need to do it in a way that people actually enjoy talking to you
Right.
and feel like you're persuasive and charismatic and enjoyable, succinct, brief, brilliant, all the things, right?
Yeah.
And so she just knew communication was going to be a really important thing in anything I did. And she felt that way for, whatever my career path was, that I would need to be able to talk well. And, that was something that she imparted on me very early on, that whatever you do, you're going to have to talk, especially because I was never a technical guy. Like, I wasn't
Yeah.
the type of dude who was building, 3,000 piece Lego sets and like buying old computers and refurbishing them in a basement. I didn't do that.
Yeah.
That was never my thing. It's not my thing. Engineering and these like hard skills were never my thing. It was always
Same.
very soft skill wise, sales, communication, that type of thing. And she figured, well, if you're going to do that, all
Better
right,
do it.
you need to do it well.
And you brought her on the show with you.
I did.
Yeah. I can't even imagine, especially just like from the short amount of time that we've spoken, it sounds like she played like a really big part in your life. And then to be able to like bring her out, I can't even imagine
Oh, it's great.
like what that felt like.
It was a childhood dream of mine. So I mentioned this in the episode too, but when I was 16, can't remember exactly what company it was, but I remember seeing a younger black guy and his mother. He was like right after college, like pretty much like the same age I am now,
Mhm.
basically. And he was there. His mother didn't go out with him, but she was in that lobby with him. And I was, 16, watched that. I'm like, yo, that was the first time I legitimately wondered, like, oh, wow, I can actually be on this show. Like, for the longest time, I watched Shark Tank with my mom, and it always felt very disconnected from anything that I could do. It felt like a fun show
Mhm.
that you watch, and you don't realize that, oh, no, they actually, like, select people to be on this, like
Mhm.
normal people like me and you to be on it. It felt like they were celebrities, super powerful millionaire, business mogul types, and I saw, oh, this kid is like 20-something, and he had a company that, wasn't all that impressive. So I'm like, oh, wait, no, this is something you can just get picked for it. And in that moment, I said, Mom, I want to go on Shark Tank. And I want you to come because I've been watching with you my whole life. I want to have that experience with you. And that was, a decade ago. Flash forward to this guy reaching out. And what makes it even funnier is how much went into getting her there, because it was a uphill battle.
Really?
Genuinely, like there was a point where I was putting my ability to be on the show on the line to get her on the show.
Because they were.
Well, they were saying she couldn't be on the show at first because they said, we want the people to be on the show to be equity partners in your company. And your mother, even though, you would consider her your business partner, because my mom is the person I call for, anything I need,
Mhm.
advice-wise. Like, Mom, what do you think about this? How do you think about that? That type of thing. I always reached out to her for that kind
But
of
they
stuff.
want it on paper.
But on paper, if you look at my operating agreement and my cap table, my mother's not going to be on there. So they felt like she doesn't need to be there. And even in my application and video interviews and whatnot, I kept mentioning my mom. They were like, no. So eventually it got to the point where they actually selected me to film. And I said, well, I want to bring my mom. They said, you can bring her. She got to fly herself out there. Like, you guys got to pay for that. We'll pay for you, but she's not with you. So
And
she'll
where
have
does she
to pay.
live?
She lives in Kentucky. That's where I'm originally
Okay.
from. I'm originally from Kentucky. I moved to Austin about 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And so they said, if you want her to come, she has to fly here on her own dime. I said, forget it. Let's do it. So my mom flies out there. And then she's with me in the hotel. And then, I'm there the day before I pitch. Me and her doing the practice reps and stuff like that. The next morning, we're about to leave the hotel. We're in like a little van getting shuttled onto the studio set. And I'm like, yo, can my mom come with me to the green room? They said, yeah, it's fine. She can come. She has to stay in the green room, though, when you film.
Mhm.
I'm like, it's fine. That's not a big deal. Whatever. And so I get there. I'm like, oh, man, wouldn't it be cool if before I go out there, because I've seen you guys do this before, wouldn't it be cool if my mom was with me in the little studio's lobby or whatever before I walk through the hallway? And they're like, actually, that would be cool. I'm like, yeah, let's make sure she's got cardio gear on and da, da, da. Cool. And so then that's when you see at the beginning when me and my mom are giving a little prayer and we're talking and we hug it out. And then I go through the hall. And then this is kind of like the 3 stages.
Okay.
If you ever play, I'm a big video game guy. All right. If you ever played a video game like Mario or Sonic or whatever, where the goal is to finish the level, but then it's like, oh, collect all the rings or all the coins
Right.
and get all these collectibles and whatever, right? So I had these stretch goals. So there were 3 tiers of my goals. Goal 1, make good TV. Even if we don't get a deal, we need to make good enough TV this episode gets aired. Because one thing a lot of people don't know also is there are a ton of people who film and never see the light of day. About 50%, it's about 50-50. You go there and you film, you have a 50-50 chance of actually making TV.
Yeah.
Right? So there's that one. That's tier 1. Tier 2 is get a deal that I'm happy about. Because, yeah, you know, being on TV is great and all, but getting a deal media-wise and then also being connected to the Sharks, getting the money, of course, and then that really boosts your ability to be earlier in the season. Because obviously, as anything goes TV-wise, you know, interest is really high at the beginning. It peters a little bit, so you want to be near the top, especially with election season coming up. You know, there's going to be a lot of bigger things happening in November and December and January probably than Shark Tank. So I wanted to make sure that I was near the top, and getting a deal helps you be nearer to the top of the season. And then the third super duper stretch goal was get my mom in here with me in the tank.
Yeah.
And so I accomplished all 3 goals. And that was an amazing thing to be able to have that experience with her. And you obviously seen the episode. I hope everybody else has seen it. And if you haven't, go watch it. It's on Hulu. Come on, don't be cheap.
Don't be cheap.
Don't be cheap.
$4.99.
Come on, guys. You
With
can do
ads.
it. With the ads, come on. Let's do it. It's like a Wendy's 5. They don't even have 4 for 4s anymore, but a $5 biggie bag. It's not that bad.
Man knows his fast food.
More than I should, honestly. It's honestly bad. That's why I got to run and lift, because I got to burn these calories off. But, you know, when I was able to get her out there, and I was planting the seed, because she was out there in the lobby, and then she was in the back with the producers watching the episode, and the producer, like, you know, viewing room and checking audio levels, stuff like that, and they gave her a little side TV to watch. And so as I'm going through, and like I planted all these little seeds. Like when Lori was out, I'm like, oh, by the way, my mom says you're her favorite shark. And when Rashawn asked, like, oh, you know, what's your why? And I had a lot of whys. I'm like, let's use the one with my mother, which was a real one. I didn't make any of that up. But it was like, oh, man, if I use that one, it's going to give me a better chance to get her out here. So I used that
salesman.
one.
You're like,
oh, bro.
You're leveraging, you're planting the seeds and then leveraging.
I'm planning. And then when I did genuinely want to ask my mom, but I felt like, oh, you know what? I'm a little iffy about 15%. I was leaning towards taking it because I went in there asking for
Are you a full owner now?
Huh?
Or were you a full owner?
No, we had already raised capital before. I have, you know, co-founders, employees, and whatnot. So I wasn't like 100% before I got there. But, you know, 50% is a sizable chunk.
Yes.
Right. So I was already going into it thinking 5% is what I want. I won't get it. I already knew for a fact nobody gets the deal they come into the Shark Tank asking for.
Did you think you'd get 15? Or did you think you would go up to 15?
I did. You know, funny enough, before I got there, I had already talked to my investors and to my team and also with myself and my mother about what's a number that I would be okay with. And the number that I set in my brain that I won't go above is 15.
Okay.
As long as it's a shark that I wanted. And funny enough, Rashawn was the shark that I wanted. So once I got Rashawn, I was like, oh, well, you know, screw it. That's the deal I wanted. But I figured out, let's make good TV. Tier 1. So I countered for 10. I knew they were going to say no to 10. But I wanted to counter because counter makes for better television.
Didn't Cuban kind of give you the, you're pushing it, kid?
Oh, yeah. Mark was pissed.
He was like, you're pushing it, kid.
Mark, see, so one thing that didn't make a lot of the episode, there were moments where like Mark was talking about, oh, well, it's gamified. It's how it's different from other cardio fitness apps or whatever. But Mark had about 4 different moments where he came in and he was big broing. There's even a moment where Rashawn and Damon were communicating with each other about going in on the deal together, and it was just pitch quiet because at that point Rashawn was the only shark that was left.
Yeah.
And so it was pitch quiet, and I was sitting there and I know what to do, and I'm like, let me tell you guys more about myself while we're waiting.
So you're just standing there?
No, you're just standing there. So Rashawn and Damon are just whispering with each other in the corner. It's pitch quiet. You're just sitting there, dead silence, and then, you know, I don't know what to say. I'm like, oh, well, let me tell you guys more about me and how great I am. And Mark was like, literally, shut up. No, be quiet. They're talking about a deal. Do not screw this up. So when they gave me the offer,
he's like, you can only hurt yourself.
Yeah, you can only hurt yourself. This is a great deal.
That is a good
for the stage you are. For the stage you are to even get a deal at all is amazing because people at my stage you don't even get deals. And for it to not be like a 150 for 50%, 15%. Again, that was the number that I went into it expecting to get, and I got it. And Rashawn was the shark that I wanted because of his investments in Coinbase, Dropbox, DoorDash, minority owner for the Atlanta
So
Falcons.
you get access to him now?
Oh yeah, me and Rashawn text like every other day. Yeah, he's a great dude.
So
Him and
that's
Damon are very vocal. Like I get to talk to them a good amount.
something that is hard to put a price on then
It's
because
priceless.
like just the expertise there, I mean, think about how many, I know you already have investors, but like at that level, they've got millions and millions of dollars. They've seen every mistake in the book. So
Oh yeah.
they can help you dodge like so many like catastrophic mistakes.
Right.
And that's got to count for so much.
Well, that's the whole reason you take a deal on Shark Tank. You're not taking a deal because the economics of it
Like
are
you could get
better.
money.
Look, we had raised before we got on Shark Tank $500,000, and we had already had another $250,000 in signed term sheets that we hadn't yet got, most of which we have received since then, because that was all the way back in June that we filmed it.
Mhm.
So I wasn't there for the money. I was there for the opportunity to get connected to people like Rashawn to grow my business. Like 150K is a
And-
number that I could get pretty much anywhere. But from him, wouldn't have been possible without Shark Tank. And then to be able to do it on this national stage where people would be able to see what we're doing with cardio on a level that they probably would not have been able to do for many, many more years as I organically build up to that level of national
Exactly.
attention. You know, there's just no way that you could simulate that any other way outside of Shark Tank. And that kind of factors into that Shark Tank deal because 15% for 150K $1 million valuation. I mean, the lowest amount that we had signed an investment for up to that point was 2.5. So I took a literal 60% discount on top of any investment I'd made before that. Not to mention some of the terms that they have on the side of those investments are also a little bit non-standard compared to others on top of that. So you go into it knowing this is not a deal I'm making for the dollars and cents blind economics of it.
So
You're doing it for the connections and for the exposure.
technically, does that devalue the other investors' like
In a
options, I guess?
No, I mean,
I don't
not
know how
particularly.
you have it set up, but
Yeah, I mean, not particularly. I mean, that's when we get into the math of cap table stuff and all that, and it gets really complicated, and that's why lawyers make a lot of money for doing it for you.
yeah,
But yes, but at the same time, the philosophy about
they understand.
like the philosophy with startups is that it's better to have a small piece of something than a big piece of nothing, right? And even if you only have a small percentage of something big, the math adds up.
Right.
You know, like for instance, Jack Dorsey, when he left Twitter, only had like 3% of Twitter at that point. But I promise you, Jack Dorsey probably left with a sizable chunk of change
Right.
when he left the company. I don't think he was losing a ton of sleep about any deal that he took along the way because he walked away with, 3% of something very big. And then I know a lot of people who have 100% of something that's worth absolutely nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And in my mind, and this is where my mental for the whole situation came across, is that I recognize that this is a sizable chunk of equity, but I'm young, I'm dumb, and this company is not a foregone conclusion to be some big 9-figure exit one day. And I know that doing this deal with them guarantees that. And I recognize, I was actually 25 at the time I filmed. I'm 26 now.
I was gonna ask how old you were.
Yeah.
26.
I turned 26 about 2 months ago. I was 25 at the time of filming. And in that moment, I realized, you know what? I'm 25. This is not going to be my last startup. And while this might not be the one that I make a 9-figure amount for myself at the end of it, I know that the connections, the pedigree that I build, the skill sets that I get from this are going to be worth more than whatever this exit amount is. And being able to call Rashawn and Damon on my cell and say, yo, I need y'all to make an intro to this person. I need y'all to send me a video telling this person to take my phone call. I need you to
can't
do this
imagine.
and do that. And then also just being able to go to the places that they go. Like I'm going to Atlanta probably in the next couple of weeks to go to this conference that Damon's hosting. And I'm going to be on stage and get to talk. There's no way I would have been able to do that if it weren't for this. So the opportunities are so much bigger than just cardio today. I'm thinking long term. I'm thinking, what am I going to do at the age of 35 and how will this move affect that positively or negatively? And this is one that there were more positives than negatives about.
Yeah, I love that, man. That's the whole like the vision of waking up every day and grinding and like all of that. You kind of like translated it into the business world of like,
Right.
long-term, short-term mindset just doesn't get you very far. And whether that's in fitness, whether that's in business, like whatever, it just doesn't work. So that's like a very mature thing for 36. But this isn't your first business, right?
This is my first big boy business, I would say. This is the first one that legitimately is paying my mortgage. That's my full-time thing. That's on a national scale that I've raised investor,
Right.
like legit VC,
But I
not
want
just
to
like
talk
angel.
about the failures.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there's some L's. This is my first legit one. But yeah, there's been a lot of L's or just small pebbles in a big ocean type. Yeah, for sure.
What other businesses have you had then?
Yeah, man, I've had a ton. Even since I've been in Austin, the company I was running full time before Cardio, it was a content creation business actually.
Okay.
So I got it really involved in the esports space during COVID. I'm a big basketball guy, no basketball during COVID. And I got lucky during my time at college, University of Kentucky, my alma mater. Shout out to my boys in the Big Blue.
I'm a
But
Kansas State fan, so we got a little.
yeah, you guys did us
We've
dirty.
been taking the numbers lately.
Yeah, bro, you did us dirty. What was that like? Was that 2 years ago? 1 year ago?
I think
In the tournament?
2 years ago and then 5 years ago.
Yeah.
It was.
Kentucky's been letting me down, man. I'm not gonna lie, but it is.
Sorry to derail that.
I know.
I had
it's
to jump
alright.
on it.
And I know. You got to take the chance when you can. You won't get too many more. So, I had a business when I was in Kentucky. I got lucky enough during that time because obviously COVID came around during March Madness. So, that was a big.
I remember that.
Yeah, it was
Like
terrible.
the opening weekend.
Yeah, dude, I remember I was a senior in college that year, and Kentucky had a really good team that year, and we were probably going to go pretty deep unless we faced you guys in that split. And then we didn't end up even playing at all, so that was very disappointing for a lot of people. And they were like, well, we got to do something. And then we had this big NBA 2K tournament during that time. And then they asked me to be a commentator because at that point I had grown my brand from a whole bunch of small business things. And again, communicating, networking, meeting people, kissing babies, rubbing shoulders,
Got to do it.
brushing elbows, all the things, right? And so they were like, oh, yeah, Destin, he's the guy. Let's get him on here. And then I was being paid like, $12 an hour to commentate over virtual basketball. But I was really good at it. And so people asked me to make more content. And then instead of taking a job, because I actually got a job offer at the time when I was jobless and broke, to work as a content creator for this esports company out of Asia. And I figured instead of hire me, can you sponsor me to start a YouTube channel and then just hire me as my business to work for you independently? So instead of hiring me as an employee, sponsor me to start a content creation business and then pay my business.
Basically go like 1099 route.
Exactly. Pretty much
But-
1099, but like sponsor me to get the equipment,
Yeah.
recording, editing, all that type of stuff. And they're like, it's cheaper for us.
Right.
Sure.
No
go for it.
insurance.
Yeah, no insurance, no insurance. We only have to pay you when we really need you. Sure. And so I started making YouTube content around NBA 2K. And then a couple months into that, the NBA actually reached out to me and said, oh, yeah, that you make good content. Keep it up. And I said, well, if it's so good, why don't you sponsor? And they were like, yeah, sure. And so I had like 200 subscribers on YouTube, and I got sponsorship from the NBA, and then that rolled over into some stuff with McDonald's and Mobile One, and follow-up stuff with that group, Gen G, and a whole bunch of stuff. And it got to a point I was doing about like 5 figures revenue a month making esports content, and I ended up folding that business because I wanted to focus on cardio. Before that, I had another company doing remote work stuff where I was selling literally just on Canva. I would interview employees and I would make a best practices and stories about this person, pretty much like slide through Canva. And then we would put a link to it in their Slack, and we would sell that as a way for people who are getting used to being remote to get to know each other better, to simulate water cooler talk that you would get in an office, but obviously through Slack.
So
And I
you've
did that
always
whole
just
one.
kind of had these ideas and
Yeah.
And dude, what I love about people like you is that you can just act on them. I think a lot of people get analysis paralysis and they have ideas, they can't act on them. What advice would you give to people that have ideas in general?
I think the worst thing you can do with an idea is wait for it to be fully fleshed out and perfect. Because, so there's a story. I heard this from Chris Rock. I don't know if it's his original story, but I heard it from him, so I'm going to give him credit. But so Chris Rock, he was talking one time about how he was stuck on the side of the highway on the shoulder. He had run out of gas or something like that. He has his hazards on. He's got his thumb up, trying to get somebody to give him a ride to a gas station. And nobody's coming over to pick him up on the side of the corner, on the side of the highway. And he says, screw it. I'm done waiting. And he just goes in his car, puts it in neutral, starts pushing. And then within 5 minutes of him pushing, somebody pulls over and gives him a ride. And the moral of that story was nobody wants to help somebody who's helpless. People want to help people who are making efforts on their own. Even if it's a futile effort, even if it's you pushing a car uphill a mile to get some gas, if people see that you're willing to do the effort to do that, then they're going to be like, all right, well, you know what? This guy is somebody who's worth helping out. So that's my philosophy with all my ideas. You know, like the only thing that I can guarantee by never even trying with these is that nothing's going to come of it. No investor is going to pick me as their next investment before I've even built a MVP or a website or my first piece of content or even made my first sales call. Nobody's going to do that. You know, what's going to happen is if I make that first sales call, I'm going to do really bad at first because I have no idea what I'm selling.
Yep.
When I showed people the very first version of cardio, it was unbelievably disgustingly ugly. Genuinely. It was unrecognizable to what the app looks like today. And that was something that people gave me a lot of crap about. But the thing is, I was getting opinions from people.
Yep.
I was getting them talking about it. And then when I'd come back to them 3 months later, oh, wow, this looks way better. You're making an effort. You're not giving up on this. Well, actually, let me introduce you to this guy. Let me show you this person. Let me give you this tool. Let me give you this piece of advice. You know, we actually got the founder of Map My Fitness to join our advisory board all the way back in 2021 before we even had a CTO, our first line of code, even a website. I made some really ugly Figma prototypes. And then I reached out to some people. One of those people connected me to him. And I showed him these really ugly Figma prototypes. And he said, yo, this is actually a really interesting concept.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you explained it to me via email, I didn't fully get it. But now that you have shown it to me and I can actually click on it on Figma and get a general idea of what you're going for, I get it. Had I not had that visual, he wouldn't have understood.
Right.
Even with an ugly visual, it was something that was enough for him to grasp onto to say, all right, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to help you out with this. And that's my biggest advice to anybody with ideas, is that an idea that's not tangible at all is literally just an idea. But once you put something on paper, once you pick up the phone and start calling, once you genuinely start putting in effort, you have something that people can act on.
Yeah.
And it takes a while. I mean, Lord knows. I mean, cardio didn't even launch in the App Store until 2023. And most people haven't even heard of us until our episode aired 2 weeks ago. But I've been working on it in my brain all the way up to, like, you know, summer of 2020.
You're so right about people wanting to help people that are actually working towards something, because I'm sure you get it. I know I get it as a podcaster. Like, people hit me up all the time. How do I start a podcast? It's like, you can figure that out, you know?
Yeah.
Ask me for
You start
more,
by starting.
exactly. Ask me for like the small fine tuning stuff.
Yeah.
Don't ask me like how to start a business.
Right.
Like, I'm sure people come to you, hey, how do I start a business?
All the time.
It's like
daily.
You gotta give them something. So yeah, I think you're dead on with that. And as far as my background, like, I've done tech sales for like the last 4 years. So I'm definitely like in that, you know, outreach world.
It's tough.
It's tough, man.
It's tough, man. I was a SDR at a company called Qualtrics out.
Oh,
in,
Qualtrics, yeah.
Yeah, you familiar? Okay.
Yeah.
So the only corporate job I've ever had in my entire
The
life.
best one you could have ever had.
Yeah, bro. SDR.
I was an SDR
100,
2 years.
bro.
100
dials a day, talking to people who don't care about what you are talking about at all.
So for people listening, if you don't know what an SDR is, it's a sales development rep. And your job, your only job, it's not even sales. It's to call people cold and get them interested in the product, and then you hand them off to a salesperson. So it is the grindiest of grindy jobs, but I believe it's the single, if I were to recommend anyone get a job, that would be the job, because the skills you learn from it are insane.
Yeah.
Like, being able to reach out to someone, because we're not even talking just the reaching out. It's like you have to find their LinkedIn, find their email, find
Scrape
their
info.
phone number. Like, you're doing all of that. They're not just giving you stuff to call. But then, yeah, to be able to call someone and spark interest out of nowhere is like an insane skill.
It's an insane skill to have. But I think even more than the skill, I think the mentality that you get from it.
Every day.
Yeah, every day. Because again, and I get this all the time. People are like, oh, man, I want to do what you do. Like, the work that you do is so cool. And you get to hang out with Dame and John. And you got all this investment money. You got a team. And you partner with the Austin Marathon. That's so cool. Oh, you had this big party for the Shark Tank viewing and all these people. You had 30,000 people across 70 countries. Like, yeah, how do you do that? I'm like, cold calls, cold emails, going to networking events and talking to people who don't want to talk to me. going to running clubs and pitching to people who don't know what I'm even pitching about and are pretty happy with Strava. It's a grind. Like these big, and that's the one thing I tell everybody, these big milestones that you have are very public wins that are super cool. But the work that goes between those milestones is grindy, nasty work. And I think going back to this SDR thing, I think being an SDR, and I saw it. I was only there for 3 months. You were there longer than me, so you know what it does. You get you either become one or the other. You either become super persistent, no quit, you find a way to motivate yourself every day, or your eyes glaze over and you just give up mentally and you quiet quit on it.
Which was the first, I was an SDR in 2017 and I took that, like I wasn't the same person then.
No.
I couldn't do it. I mentally could not handle ripping dials all day and getting told to fuck off. Like it was too much.
It's tough, man.
Yeah. I came back like 7 years later and was in a better mindset. And that's when I was able to do it successfully. You're totally right though. You either you're in that headspace or you're not. Like, and then there's the flip of that, or the other side of that, where for someone like you, where it's like, if I'm going to be cold calling, why would I not be cold calling for myself?
And I'm so glad you said that.
And like, I'm not someone that wants to be a business owner unless it's like this, right? Like I would love if this took off or whatever, but I don't have that drive to be a business owner. So like I'm perfectly fine climbing that corporate ladder as long as it's at companies that give me the lifestyle that I want. I need the flexibility. I need to go grocery shop during the day. If I can find those companies that fit my lifestyle, sure, I'll do that. But for someone like you, it's like, if you're cold calling, ripping $100 a day, why not for yourself?
And the thing is, I'm not afraid to rip 100 cold calls a day.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid for 99 of those 100 people to say, screw off, fuck off, or just not answer the phone at all. I'm not afraid to send emails to people who I stole their email and they respond, please unsubscribe, stop, blah. I'm not afraid of that. The only thing I'm afraid of is doing that for somebody that's not myself. Because I'm doing all this grunt work for somebody who I don't really care about. You know, like when I worked at Qualtrics, like this is $1 billion company. They had sold to SAP for $7 billion. And I'm getting paid, you know, at the time I was getting paid an hourly. And if I did get that job full time, I've been getting paid like $45K base plus commission. I'm thinking, man, I'm seeing how much these licenses sell for. And I'm getting paid this much to do this grunt work. Like the comparison I made to SDR work when I would talk to my friends, 'cause I ran track in high school and stuff, is like if you ran the 4x1 and you were like that first person of that 100 meter and you just did that 100 times every day. And you got to run full sprint 100 times a day for somebody else to get the baton and get all the glory at the end of the race. Because nobody really remembers the person who starts the 4x1. They remember the person who finishes the race. And you got to sit there and do all this effort for the person at the end to get pretty much all the glory. And I'm doing it for somebody who I don't care about, which is my company. And I'm cool with that. Like, there's a lot of grunt work I do for cardio, and I don't get credit for a lot of it. And honestly, being a CEO of a company sometimes is like being an SDR. You know, you don't get a lot of credit for some of the stuff that you do. Like when things don't work out, you get shit on. When there are things that happen that aren't as big, high-level news, nobody knows about it.
You have to go in front of the board if things aren't going right.
Yeah, when things happen to the product. Like for instance, it's a consumer app. And the one thing I will say about B2B products is that they kind of get it. Like, oh, we're a business. We understand like how our products sometimes mess up. As a consumer, you're just a 20-year-old dude living in College Station, Texas A&M, using the app, and it crashes in the middle of your 3-mile run, and you look at your phone and it didn't save it, and you're typing to me saying, what the Destin, and because I'm such a public-facing CEO of our company, especially post Shark Tank, everybody directs the stuff to me, and I ain't writing not a single line of code. Any problem that happens with that app is not my fault technically, but you gotta eat it because it's all your fault. It's all on you when it goes well, but it's also your fault when it doesn't. No matter what it is, it's always your fault. And the thing about it is you gotta eat that. And most of the milestones that you accomplish aren't going to be on national television, ABC. You're not going to have Forbes and all these people write about it. Most of them are just little small things. Oh, we increased revenue 5% this month. I had to send 100 emails a day to do that, but we had to do it. Or you know what? I made a new Figma prototype for the app. Now, instead of 90% of the people who I showed it to hating it, now only 75% of them hate it. Like, you got to be okay with that win.
You truly have to love the grind.
You got to love eating shit. And I mean that in the nicest way possible. If you do not enjoy sucking at something and having people tell you that you suck at something and not giving a shit about the thing that you've been putting your blood, sweat, heart, tears, money, finances, time, resources into, do not do this. Don't do it, because it's not going to be all Shark Tank and Forbes under 30s and $1 million round closes. It's going to be 99% of the time people ignoring your emails, people ignoring your phone calls, people not downloading your product, people not buying your product, people asking why would I use this instead of this other competing product, people who you reach out to for investment saying that, oh, it doesn't fit into our thesis, or it's too early, or we don't really see the founder market fit, or we think that this isn't really competitive against this. Like, I have a folder, a literal dedicated folder of all, not all, because sometimes I just forget, because eventually your eyes just glaze over, but I have a folder of all the meaningful things that people have said to me in writing or via email or whatever about why this was a bad idea or it was stupid, just so I could keep it, to remember all the people who did not like this idea. And also to remember that people are going to be there to celebrate your wins, but they are not going to be there to celebrate the process of getting those wins.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to be there for that part. And if you're expecting everybody to support what you do, if you're expecting people to buy what you're selling immediately, if you're expecting people to drop everything to support, it's just not going to happen. You got to do this because you want to do it.
Yeah, I think like a lot of TikTok and Instagram videos over our youth and growing up have been about how to prove people wrong and how to, you know, live this lifestyle, and that's the best way to get back at someone. And it sounds good with like some instrumental music behind it.
Yeah, it's cute with the little Sigma male edits and stuff like that. Yeah, it's cute.
It's cute.
It's really cute. Some David Goggins audio on it. You know, they don't know me, son. I guess they don't know you. I guess they don't.
Problem is with that is if you're truly doing something that takes so much effort and grind and discipline to please somebody or to prove somebody else wrong, that's a pretty miserable way to live.
Yeah.
Where it's like, if you flip that and you're like, I don't really care what people think because I love doing this.
Yeah.
And it fulfills me. It gives me purpose. That's just a much healthier way to go about things.
Yeah. And you know, I won't tell anybody on what to be inspired by. You know, some people are inspired by proving people wrong. Some people are inspired by generational wealth. Some people are inspired by, you know, building something with their own two hands and having people use it. Some people really believe that a problem that they're building a solution for needs to be solved, and they want to do their part in creating that solution. You know, whatever it is that inspires you, I'm never going to tell anybody that they're wrong. And honestly, if it works for you, you're succeeding because of it. You know, I know people who actively are doing things to spite other people, and they're really good at what they do. I'm like, all right, you know what? That's fine, I guess.
I just wonder how sustainable it is.
Well, see, that's the thing. How sustainable is this feeling of proving people wrong? Like, what happens when you have proved people wrong? And now those people aren't hating on you anymore and they believe in you.
Yeah, then what?
Right, now what?
And it's like, if you were, say, doing this for like you started this business in this example for the glory. It's like, once you get on Shark Tank, then what?
Right. Like, once you sell it, then what? And you got all this money. Now, what do you want to do with it? You know, for me, and I won't sit here and lie, there are people who I do envision in my brain when I'm working late at night, burning that midnight oil, and I'm like, I should go to sleep. I'm like, well, that guy probably thinks he would go to sleep right now. I'm like, oh, fuck that guy. And I crank for another hour. So I'm not going to lie, there are moments where I tap into that, but eventually that feeling fades over time, especially as you start getting successful, that your success is undeniable. And now everybody who used to hate is a super fan. Like, again, I got people who hit my phone up from high school I haven't spoken to in almost a decade saying, man, we always knew you were going to be great. I'm like, man, when did that happen? When did this switch happen? That was not the conversation in high school when I was on
high school like for you?
High school was interesting because I was always a smart kid, but I was definitely one of those people who kind of fell through the cracks of general public education because my skill sets were not something that do well in a school setting. Because, I mean, I was smart. I got 30 on my ACT.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, but I got 2.0 GPA because I just did not care about school. Like, doing repetitive, busy work was not something I cared about. And then the skills that I did have and developed, like selling things, speaking, business, finance. We didn't have classes on that. I didn't care about geometry and calculus. Biology was relatively interesting, but it wasn't something that I was going to put my blood, sweat, heart, and tears into. I got a C in art, I don't like to draw.
Yeah.
I don't like painting. I don't care. And the thing about me, it's my greatest power and it's my greatest weakness, is that for the things that I care about, I am toxically obsessed. Like with fitness, like I just made a decision. All right, you know what? I want to be buff. And I've gained like 30 pounds of muscle in like 2 months. Like I want to run a marathon. And I went from like barely being able to run 3 miles to running like 4 half marathons and start running half marathons casually within like 2 months. With business, like I really want to start this cardio fitness app, and without being a developer, without being a runner really, because I ran high school non-competitively. I ran on track, but I was definitely one of the people who's like, oh yeah, let's throw them into this heat, whatever. You're not gonna we're not gonna get on state. We're not gonna make it to state because of Destin's contribution.
You're just there for the oranges and the sandwiches.
Yeah, I'm there for the Capri Suns and to hang out with my buddies who are actually fast and to get in shape for basketball. Like,
Hell yeah.
the things I cared about deeply, I put in immense effort. So the cardio, like I wasn't a runner, I wasn't a developer, I didn't have money, I had no industry experience, I never had a corporate job, I didn't have any savings, I didn't know investors, but I said, you know what, I really want to do this thing. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I've just committed in my brain that I'm going to do it. Like even funnier is I got the idea with a group of like 5 other people, and all of the other 5, or I guess 4 in this case, got real jobs and they just stopped working on it with me. And one day I was by myself doing it. I'm like, yo guys, I'm going to keep working on this. If you guys don't want to work on it with me anymore, just let me know. And that was like September of 2020. They all said, yeah, it's not going anywhere. I'm like,
did you hear from them?
the thing is, they're all very positive. They all
Good.
Because they all recognize,
I can see that getting ugly.
Well, and that's what I was really nervous about. Because technically I did get the idea originally with a group. Obviously the idea has changed radically. Name of it, how it works, all these different components of it. Like the general basis of a gamified fitness app is pretty much all it was at that time. Yeah. And I wondered, damn, are they going to be the type, is it going to be like Mark Zuckerberg, the Voss type situation where they're going to come around and say, well, we originally had this idea and blah, blah, blah. And they all been very supportive. They've even invested in some of our equity crowd funds that we've done.
Nice.
They use the app. I've seen them in person since then. And they all recognize, hey, you know what? We all gave up on it. You didn't give up on it. You were eating shit. You were living out of your car, eating peanut butter out of a jar, doing all this, doing all that, raising the money, finding the revenue, finding the team, growing it, and all this. Like, it would be unfair of us to even try to take any credit for that.
Yeah, because everyone has ideas.
Yeah. Bro, you know how many times I hear people say, oh, man, I'm so glad somebody did this. I had an idea like that when I was in college. And like every time a company becomes successful, people are like, oh, I had this idea 5 years ago.
It's so funny.
I hear it all the time. Even people with me in this, they're like, oh, man, I had this idea of like a turf war type cardio fitness app 10 years ago. I'm like, well,
should have acted.
Should have done something about it, man.
So were you really living out of your car?
Yeah, man. When I first moved to Austin, dude, I was in an Airbnb. Then I moved out of that Airbnb because I was still broke and I couldn't renew because it had already been a month since I signed up because I only had $2,000. I spent the $2,000 on the Airbnb.
So you came here with $2,000.
Yeah, and I spent it on the Airbnb. And then after that, I was in this extended stay hotel for a couple of weeks, and I was there like paying basically by the day, figuring out what I wanted to do.
So how were you making money during that time?
Bro, random stuff, man. I was sliding in people's DMs on LinkedIn like crazy. Like the way you slid into my DMs for a podcast interview, I was doing that with people like, hey, I saw you on this Zoom. Like I would go on Eventbrite. This is what my strategy was when I first moved to Austin. Because I had never been to Austin. I never lived here. Didn't know anybody who lived here. It was middle of COVID, so there was no in-person networking events. I wasn't like a UT student. I didn't have no network there. I was just a dude who read online that Austin was a great place to live for young entrepreneurs. And I said, hey, I'm one of those. And I just got in my car and drove here from Kentucky one day.
Love it.
And my mom came with me. She's the only person in Kentucky who was like, okay, this is a good idea because I believe in you.
Yeah.
Everybody else was like, oh, it's a terrible idea. Which, to
was
be
it
honest.
Airbnb in Riverside, by the way?
No, it was actually in Manor.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I feel like when I was coming down here a lot, all the Airbnbs that were under 2K were like in Riverside.
Yeah, I know. I'm glad I didn't pick over there. Manor was better. Manor was definitely better. Now I know the lay of the land. But yeah, dude, I was sliding people's DMs. Like I got people to give me random web development things. I was like, oh, I can build a website. I didn't know how to build websites, but I got hired to build 3. I'm like, oh crap, let's learn how to build websites now. So I would build people's websites. I was doing blog writing. I was doing copywriting on people's websites. I was doing social media management gigs and stuff like just whatever I could find. $18 for 20 hours here, 1,000 for a website here, 270 to fix copywriting here. And then I was just living dirt cheap. I was eating rotisserie chicken from the Walmart deli and peanut butter out of a jar with a spoon and bread, like every day for like 2 months.
Dude, I lived a similar situation when I quit being an SDR.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm gonna turn, because I do like video editing and stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm just gonna turn this into a business. I had the same. If I'm a cold call, I'm a cold call for myself.
For me,
But the thing that I've struggled with, and I'm glad that you didn't get distracted by this, is when you're living like that, the day-to-day is so important. Like, I have to pay bills today. I have
Yeah.
to pay bills tomorrow. How can I come up with $50? How can I come up with $100?
right.
And it's hard to like get out of that loop of like, okay, how do I get up here?
How do I escape the rat race?
Yeah.
To build something.
Like, so how did you?
Well, that's where I got lucky. So I got lucky. And here's one thing I will say. If anybody who's a successful business person ever tells you that they didn't get lucky, they are a liar. They're in denial, because everybody who is successful in this game is lucky. So I got lucky because while the first month I was living here in Austin, I was still interviewing for jobs just in case stuff didn't work out. Because I wasn't so naive to think that, yeah, I'm going to go here and just be a superstar entrepreneur and never get a job. Which is funny enough, actually, what happened. I never did get a job. But I didn't know that at the time to be possible. So I was applying for jobs, and I actually applied for this job, SDR role, for a startup out of Philly, remote thing in Austin. And then literally, and this is how much sense of self I had about the fact that's not what I wanted to do. And I had these bigger dreams for myself, and I didn't want to take time out of my day, even if it meant I would make more money to do something for somebody else when I could eventually do it for myself. 15 minutes into this interview, I said, you know what? I'm going to be real with you, man. This job is just not for me. And surprisingly, because the guy I was interviewing with, he was actually the CEO of the company, because it was a startup. And he said, wow, man, don't you eat this job? He's like, no, I mean, yeah, but I just know for a fact that I'm going to hate it. And I feel like I can do something for myself that I won't hate as much. So I'll just let you know I'm not going to waste your time even entertaining the interview anymore. He said, wow, that's interesting. I don't think I've ever heard anybody disqualify themselves for a job during the interview before. And he asked, what do you want to do? I said, I want to be an entrepreneur. He said, well, what's your idea? I said, well, don't really have any, but I just know I do. And he said, you know, I'm working on this venture studio idea, which if you're familiar with venture studio, it's pretty much they give you money to incubate an idea that they have. And so he ended up giving me $100,000 angel investment for an idea that he had about the company I mentioned with the Slack profiles and stuff.
Yeah.
That was his original idea. And he said, could you make a business out of this? I said, yeah. He said, you have 24 hours to build me a business model and a pitch deck. I said, bet. Next day, came back with a 15-slide deck breaking down how it would work, how much we would charge, how it would, what we would do, distribution strategy, yada, yada, yada. And he said, wow, here's $100,000. Like, let's go. And like,
That's crazy.
cool. And so that basically got me out of homelessness. So thank you, Justin, if you're here.
So how does that work? Is that like, hey, I'm giving you $100,000 salary essentially? Or is this, hey, you have to use this $100,000 for the business?
Yeah, you have to use it for the business. So there was a lot of stipulations for it. So I could pay myself of it $4,000 a month.
Okay.
And then the rest of it had to go to ops for the
Okay.
business, right? Obviously, they're all different. It depends on who you're talking
Right.
to, how they go about it. But his was very structured. Maybe a little too structured. He honestly did feel more like a boss than an investor.
Mm-hmm.
Very structured.
Because
But-
like some of those record deals, it's like they'll
Yeah.
give you $100,000, but you have to pay for studio time. You have to pay for rent. Like some of
Yeah,
these
it's-
record deals are like real sketchy.
Yeah, well, that's the thing about
Same as
venture.
like business deals.
Yeah, well, the venture studio is very similar to that. And that's why it didn't really work out. Me and him just ended up not being good partners. But again, I made enough money off of that to move out of my car in a hotel and get an apartment. So I appreciate it. But it just didn't really work out for us long
And
term.
like the more you can be exposed to
Oh, yeah.
obstacles you're going to run into and all of that is.
Well, that taught me the importance of a partnership.
Yeah,
Because
always a
business
lesson.
partnerships, like everybody talks about marriage, but business partnerships are basically marriage. Maybe even more intimate than marriage. Because there's no makeup sex in business. You don't go on
Depends
dates.
on your partner.
Yeah, well,
but-
it depends on who you're working with, right? But unfortunately, not with mine. So with business, there is no way to just make up anything. If it's not going well, it's just not going well.
Yeah.
Marriage counseling doesn't really exist for co-founders. It's either is the business going well or is it not? And if it's not, Whose fault is it? Is it your fault? Is it my fault? Maybe you should be working more hours. You went on a date with your girlfriend last weekend. You went to the Maldives for your honeymoon, or you were out with your boys playing Call of Duty last night and you didn't make that TikTok. Well, you didn't finish that feature on time. Well, you didn't do it. And it just gets very dicey. And so you have to be in business, especially in an early stage, highly volatile startup where you're not getting paid much to be there. You got to be very selective. And it's hard to be selective when you're begging.
Yes.
You know, it's hard to be selective when you're a beggar, but one of the biggest mistakes that you can make, and I've been lucky to have pretty good co-founders up to this point. You know, I've had some duds, but the majority of them, even if it didn't work out for us long term, I can say that they didn't screw me over. And they've been fair to me, I've been fair to them. And they were useful for the time I had them. I even had to go with that with Cardio. You know, my original co-founder's not even with the company anymore. And the most important thing I could say for somebody who wants to build something big is you need to find good partners, good first hires, and you need to make sure that you're personally aligned with them. Like, my hiring process is intensive. You know, when I was reaching out to engineers and people, I would have a call with me to get to know them, and we wouldn't really talk about the company much. I would highlight the company, but then I'd ask them questions about themselves, most of which had nothing to do with the direct business. I would say, you know, what's the lowest moment in your life? What's the most important thing that ever happened in your life? Why do you want to be an entrepreneur? If this happened, what would you do? And they're not even business specific questions. Like, you know, if your wife or your husband or, you know, your significant other broke up with you, what would you do? What would you do if your partner didn't support your dreams? What would you do with this, and that? Because these things are important. These are the things that actually change a business. Because, you know, everybody understands, yeah, we're out of money. Nobody uses our product. Or we got to work 20 hours more a week than we thought we would. Like, these are things that obviously people go into understanding a bit. But nobody knows how getting married is going to affect your business relationship. Nobody understands how, you know, a death in the family will affect your business. Nobody understands, you know, difference in our personal lifestyles. I like to go out on the weekends. You want to grind through the weekend. Will you resent me for that? You know, these are the things you got to know, because they're going to create friction in your relationship and your ability to work with each other in ways that aren't as obvious as we're out of money. What do we do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting, man. It's interesting. Well, dude, we hit our hour already, but shout out all your how people can find you.
Yeah.
Get your phone number off your Instagram.
I tried to do that before we started the interview, and I couldn't even. It said, we can't save your changes. So I'm like, well, go for it, I guess. Hit me up. I'm very accessible. But you can find me on Instagram, gfortune_500. He found me, so I guess I'm pretty easy to find. LinkedIn, Destin George Bell. You can also find Cardio on the App Store as card.io. That's spelled cardio with a dot between the D and the I, CARD.io. Running game, you'll find it, hopefully, if our ASO is good. We've been working on that. There's this one cardgames.io thing that's out there that used to have the #1 spot. We just took it from them, so it's space, baby. We got that ASO, baby. Let's go. And if you're Android, because right now we're only on Apple, you can go to our website, which is downloadcard.io, and you can join our Android waitlist. We would love to have you. And once we have that app for the green text bubblers of the world, we will be sure to let you know.
But also get an iPhone.
But also get an iPhone, because have you no shame?
Have you no shame?
Have you no shame? All right, the fans here.
Have you no shame? All right. Well, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me, bro. Appreciate you.